What do you prioritize more? People liking you or your life's purpose? If you knew you could have everything you wanted if you just believed, would you take the first step or wait another 10 years? Here on the SDR&R podcast, we tackle everything holding us back. Lovely lyrics, good classic grunge rock song. Nice way to start off our podcast in our new studio. Hope you guys like the setting. For those of you on Apple Podcasts and whatnot, there is a video version on YouTube, so feel free to check that out if you enjoy videos. We also have a lava lamp here, so that's cool. So that was, of course, the Cranberries with Zombie. So the lyrics are, and I think it's great, another head hangs lonely, child is slowly taken, and the violence caused such silence, who are we mistaken? But you see, it's not me, it's not my family. In your head, they are fighting. In your head, zombie. So that was, of course, before The Walking Dead and all of these other zombie things happened, but it's very fitting for this week's episode, which we'll be talking about how we can become zombies quite easily if we're not careful through just repeating habits and not, making new habits. So we've kind of touched on this topic, but I think it warrants a whole podcast on its own because it's really important for our everyday lives. So let's just jump right in. You can become a zombie. I don't know if you like to eat brains or not, but that's kind of a metaphorical thing in there. But in a traditional sense, you can become a zombie as a person who is no longer really alive. Your heart might be beating, you might be relatively conscious some of the time, but if you're just going through the motions of life, you're not going to really be alive any longer. And that should be a really scary thing. The unfortunate truth, though, is that it's extremely common. And I think that throughout human history and philosophically, we've really looked at children as being innocent. We've looked at children as being more vivacious and certainly equated youth with life, right? And the older you get, the closer to death you become and getting old. I guess when we think about that, we think about living less, but that doesn't have to happen. It can be actually quite the opposite. Time can pass and you can grow younger. That sounds totally opposite to kind of our intuition, but it's absolutely the truth. So how does that work? We need to take it back a second to creating habits, okay? There are thousands of habits that we have where we just kind of go through this cycle. We've talked before on some episodes about me driving a car. So when I first learned to drive a car or was learning to drive a car, I didn't know shit about where anything was. I didn't know how hard or soft I should, hit the brakes or the gas for that matter, much to my dad's chagrin. But over time, I got a feel for where everything was and how hard I should hit the brakes and how to shift and, put in park. And it became so habitualized that I no longer have to think about it, which is good in a lot of ways because it would be taxing upon me and my consciousness to have to think about that every day. However, those types of habitualized actions and interactions in the world cause you to no longer be present and conscious and alive. So if you really want to go back to, philosophy with Descartes' cogito, he called it, where, I think, therefore I am, he could only prove his own existence as long as he was thinking, because he was a thinking thing. And he said, I don't know whatever else exists, but I know that I am a thinking thing, and the action of thinking proves my existence and my life and my presence, right? And I understand that might be kind of abstract for us all, and I would like to pin it down to a useful thing that we have right now. So I think you can come at life actively where you're conscious of what's going on, you're present, you're making new decisions, right? You're intentional about where you are and what you want to do in that moment, allowing for new habits to occur or allowing yourself to sort of code over past habits. So that to me would be life. That would be presence, right? That would be active. So the opposite of that is just going through the motions, as we say. So the opposite of life would be not being present. It would be having a set of reactions to the world around us that might have made sense at some prior time, maybe even decades ago, but it's no longer relevant and no longer the best, and you're not thinking about it. It's helpful that I can jump in a car and drive and not be conscious about the specifics about that drive, and to the point where I don't even remember that 20 or 30 minutes out of my life. Like even that day, I don't remember really what happened because I don't have to be conscious and present for it. I can think about other things. However, when you apply that to things like relationships, when you apply that to your goals and your successes or lack thereof, when you apply that to work, when you apply that to your productivity, when you apply that to your parenting, if you have kids, that can be very bad. You don't just want to go through the motions with your partner. As tempting as it may be, as complacent as you may be, if you do that, that relationship will ultimately die because you're not injecting any presence into that relationship. You're not alive in that relationship and can't really expect your partner to be alive either. So to simplify this, I want to make some broad strokes. And this is not indicative of the actual reality of the situation, but I think it's helpful to sort of categorize things, okay? So in the one column, we have the possibility to live life intentionally with presence. And by presence, I mean we're thinking about what's going on. We're feeling our bodies in a meditative way. We're feeling our emotions. We're aware of the thoughts in the back of our minds. We're aware of what people are saying. We're aware of their micro expressions. That's a very vivacious way to live in a moment. The opposite of that, and again, I'm using broad strokes here, but the opposite of that is basically to not be present. So to be kind of your mind is turned off and you're thinking about some other time or place or, abstract thought, right? Maybe you're zoned out into your social media feed, right? But your actions and reactions are pre-programmed and you're just kind of repeating those things over and over and over ad nauseum until you die. What we want to do is maximize the opportunities to be present in the moments that matter in our lives. We don't need to be present when we're driving necessarily. Obviously be safe, but beyond that, I don't need to be present and consciously think about where the seatbelt goes. I know where the seatbelt buckles. So I can go through those motions and it's fine. However, if somebody triggers me, that again, triggers are my own responsibility. Watch the last episode on triggers. But if somebody triggers me, I will go through this trigger loop. I will go through this reaction and set of thinking and feeling and maybe anger or resentment or loneliness or feeling overwhelmed or anxiety. All of those things will happen in the trigger loop. And I am not in control of that. And I'm not choosing that. That's all a set coded reaction from normally whenever we were kids, but oftentimes, in our early teens or something like that, right? So that's death, right? That's towards death. Habitualized responses, not being present, going through these energetic loops where it just sucks you of your vivaciousness, your passion, your drive, your capacity to do the things you want to do, is all the zombie death, right? And I love the lyrics here because, but you see, it's not me, it's not my family. It's in your head, they are fighting. And that gives me this image of, it's kind of a war in your mind. You always have the opportunity to be present in a moment, however scary that may be, or you have the opportunity to react in that moment in the same way that you have been programmed or programmed yourself to react. You are still in control, you are still holding the pen. Obviously, we've seen people in the thousands or even millions growing older over time. So how is it that they could grow younger? I think to understand how people can grow younger is to understand how they normally grow older. They grow older by coming up with more coding. You could think about it as coming up with more triggers, okay, but that's not all of it. Basically, if you think about it, with the driving example, let's use a different one. So brushing your teeth, right? When I was a very young child and I first started to brush my teeth, I didn't have a pattern to do it with. Pretty quickly, it became, this pattern, and I have it memorized, and, I do exactly 10 back and forths, on each section of my teeth, right? But I used to have to think about it. The brushing my teeth opportunity to be present in life is, I've codified that one. I've coded it and I've got it down. I did have to change it when I switched to like a power electric toothbrush, right? So the way that people grow older, is by codifying all of their reactions to the world. Obviously, we've been talking about pretty superficial things, but let's talk about deeper things. So if you watch a lot of news, for example, they will sort of teach you, those newscasters and hosts, especially these days, will teach you how to react to stuff in the news. And that will be your reaction. So we as a society, more than ever, have a bunch of triggers related to just saying Donald Trump. We have a lot of triggers related to, just saying wokeness or AOC. And I'm not getting political on us. I don't think that's worth our time, really. But it is important to know that we are coding actively our reactions. And the more coded reactions we have, the less we are youthful, the less we are alive. So what happens over time is that everything that happens in your daily life, every small activity that happens. So if you go to the supermarket, that transactional interaction with the clerk, that human being, is coded and you don't remember it, And perhaps more importantly, micro interactions with your spouse or your partner or your children, it's just coded. So you are no longer present. You are no longer really watching and listening to who these people are, what these human beings are feeling, what they're trying to tell and express to you. You're missing out on the opportunity to actually interact with them so that you can, complacently go through the motions with life and basically become a zombie. So that's how you grow older, because obviously the more time you have, the more opportunities you have to codify reactions. And that means that, life isn't going to throw you much that's very new when you're 90. When you were 5, half of the shit that happens to you is new, right? So there's all of these new opportunities for you to see it with new eyes, fresh eyes. But when you're 90, if you have not actively grown young, and you have allowed yourself to grow old, then you will not enjoy life at all, because you're not there. Everything that you do is just this trigger loop, right? And that's lame. If you go through weeks without really, like, if you're like, God, time is flying by, I don't even remember, what did we do in the last week? That should be a scary thought, because you ought to know. You really should. And people that are growing young, they know what has happened because they were present for those opportunities to be alive. And this isn't some like mystical hippy-dippy thing. This is your life. I have known dead people that walk around. I know narcissists suck and I don't enjoy really spending time with them much. But if you must spend a lot of time with a narcissist, then here's how you have fun with it, okay? You know how they're going to react because they've shown you their triggers, right? So you can control them like a puppet. You can make them react in all the different ways that you want. If you want them to like you, you can kiss their ass a little bit, right? If you want them to blow their top in front of someone like an authority figure that's going to take note of it, if you're at court, you can make them blow their top and get all crazy defensive easily because they're not present. They have to do their reactions. They don't have a choice, or they don't believe they do. They do, actually, but they are too afraid of being vulnerable. They're too afraid of being present in that moment and actually thinking something new or reacting in a new way. They have that opportunity, but they choose not to do it. And that's on them. Like, that's their bullshit life. It doesn't have to be yours, though. You have the opportunity every moment. Every day is a new opportunity to become enlightened. Every day is a new opportunity to find who you are more than the day before. Every day is an opportunity to move towards your success and your goals and your fucking life's purpose. Every day. Not only every day, every moment is an opportunity for that. So if you feel deadpan, if you feel like you don't have emotions any longer, if you're that numb to the world, you're probably living a lot of your life without being present, without life. You're just going through the motions like a zombie. Let that settle in for a bit, because this should rock your world. It certainly rocks mine. You need to be cautious about losing your life to complacency. And I want to kind of normalize this, because it is nice. It's kind of like comfort food, you know? It's like a movie where you can easily predict what all the scenes are going to be, and there's a comfort to that because you know it. You know, like kids, I've found it makes me sick sometimes to read the same book for like the 100th time, but that's comforting to them because they can control it. They know what to expect. They're not afraid of what might happen. So it's predictable, it's structured, it's safe, it's sort of within their control. So if they can get you to read this book again, or if you're an adult, if you watch these movies that are, or TV shows that are largely the same, The Bachelor, every week, that's comforting to you, and that's okay. That's a comfort food type deal. But you don't want to live your whole life with comfort food, man. You don't want to do that, because then you will not be alive. You'll just be repeating stuff before. I guess if you want to repeat your life, you know, like biblically bury your talents and keep them safe, you know, and not go out there on a limb and risk things and be vulnerable to the new moments and the new feelings and what's going on in your life, and soak it up, take it in, feel it, passionately enjoy it. That's your call. I'd say at least there ought to be a balance somewhere in there. So to circle back, to simplify this, we have on the one column, we have over here all of the dead stuff, right? Where you're a zombie, you're going through the motions, you're repeating. At its worst, you're a narcissist. And narcissists are people who you know, their actual vulnerable self that is present is like this tiny little kid with this, you know, huge steel barrel and walls, stone walls around them. That's how I imagine it anyway. So yeah, if you took, you know, 30 years and like chipped away at every brick and that steel barrel around them, you could, in theory, get to like their actual inner child that hasn't seen the light of day since they decided to become full narcissist and ignore everything, right? But, you know, largely their life is predetermined. So whatever happens to them, it's just an if-then computer statement. You know, if you ever did coding when you were younger, if A, then B. So if somebody accuses me of something, I have this reaction, and that's it. That's my whole life. Because you have tens of millions of pre-programmed reactions, and that's your whole life. You think about it that way? I mean, this is important to understand. Your entire rest of your existence will be programmed, and then you will just go through the motions, play that part, keep the mask on, be a zombie, until you stop breathing. And that's the whole fucking thing. That's the whole thing. Or you can choose to be present and alive. You can choose to feel, empathize with what your children are expressing to you. You can choose to be humble and be wrong sometimes. You can choose to look at things from their perspective. You can choose to take a step back and say, well, shit, maybe this pre-programmed reaction doesn't make sense anymore. Our coping skills might not make sense anymore. They might have made sense when we were, 6, 7 years old. We talked about, with empathy, we talked about a common fight that happens with parents, right? The mom brings up a concern to the dad about money, and the dad gets upset because, he doesn't think he can pay for rent that month. So he throws his plate against the wall and it shatters and scares the shit out of everybody in the house. The child is like 5 sitting on the side of the table, next to them, and the dad walks away and leaves the household, and the kid doesn't know if her caretaker is ever going to come back. Okay, so that is terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. And one might code a reaction in life from having that experience at a young, vulnerable age. And that reaction might be to never, ever, ever, no matter what, bring up money to someone you love. So it totally makes sense, because that child sees what happens when someone brings up money to someone they love. It's absolute chaos. It's terrifying. They don't want that to happen again. But when you're 40 and you make your own money, what if you bring up money? You are safe when you're 40. You don't have to have the reaction the dad's obviously triggered, that's an unreasonable reaction. And the kid has programmed that she never brings up money. But when you're older, when you're an independent adult and you make your own money, of course you can bring up money, like no problem. So obviously the coding that we do early on makes sense when we code it, but it rarely makes sense when we're older. So we have to, in order to grow young, we have to actively watch ourselves with humility, with grace, with empathy, and we need to recode and step aside humbly. I keep saying humble because it's hard. It's hard to give up your reactions. It's terrifying sometimes to give up our reactions, because when we coded them, when we put that shit in the back of our minds and our subconscious, it fucking mattered. Yeah, intellectually, Jonathan, I get you, man, but in my heart, no, I don't understand. I don't trust that. It can be terrifying to recode, or even allow yourself the opportunity to recode, but that's what you've got to do, because truly every moment is different. It might feel similar, but it's different. And there is a plethora, there is an infinitude of things that you can perceive that you can soak up, that you can feel, that you can imagine, that you can think, that you can do or not do, okay? Every moment is an opportunity to become enlightened. Every moment is an opportunity to be more yourself than ever before. And the way to do that is through presence and a lot of courage to be able to set aside, even for a moment, just do the best you can. Stretch yourself. You're not going to do this all in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But stretch yourself, and to the extent possible, set aside your reactions. When you feel that triggered response arising in your heart, in your mind, when you feel that rage or sadness or anxiety or overwhelmed or whatever it is, set it aside humbly and think for a minute. You might need to take a beat. I love that me and Marla, in our relationship, if we get close to a trigger of our own, we do our best to spot it humbly, and then we say, listen, babe, I gotta take a beat. I just need a minute. I love you. I need to put myself into another reaction so that I can see what's going on clearly, not with like sunglasses on or whatever it would be. So there's plenty of life to be lived, and you can grow younger if you learn the habit of being present. So it's really comes down to one decision in every moment of your life, and you can habitualize this particular decision, okay? You can choose to not be present and just be a zombie, and that will be safe for you. Very little new will happen to you, and you can just die. And some people, let me tell you, I'm forlorn saying this because it breaks my heart, but some people prefer to die in this way. They really prefer that. And I cannot fathom the amount of trauma and terrifying things that would have happened to them that would cause them to want to do that. But that is the reality, and we cannot save them. So that's up to them. We can't save other people from their own doom. If they choose to do that, if they choose to die in that way and always react and never have a new present moment, that's up to them. However, we have the opportunity to come up with the habit of being present and not reacting. We have the opportunity to get in the habit of feeling things, of intuiting things, of empathizing with the people that we interact with, of setting aside our bullshit egos and reactivity and narcissism and whatever you want to call it that's available and within yourself. We can set aside all of the coding that we made for another time that has come and gone. And then we can learn how to always be present. And man, that is cool as shit. That is the best thing in the fucking universe. You have the capacity to grow young to where you are able to be more present, more in love with life when you're 90 than when you were 5. Think about that. Like, sign my ass up. But that's why it is that you meet some old people in their 90s and it's like, or any age, and it's like their age doesn't matter. It truly does not matter because they're just glowing. They're just putting out this field of joy and appreciation for life and vivaciousness and passion and care and love, and it just emanates from them like this huge pillow of love and mojo, right? I know you felt it because you can't help it sometimes, but that's how they get there. My grandmother is like that. She's 99 and she does that everywhere she goes. You can't help but feel joyous and appreciative of life because she does it so well. She is so deeply in the habit of doing that rather than her pre-programmed reactions. I also want to say that, people really hold to belief structures a lot. And I'm not really talking about belief structures when I talk about programmed reactions, because that's a different thing. Yes, it is programming. But, somebody who is in love with life and habitually lives life passionately and in the present, who's the opposite of a zombie in what we're talking about, it kind of doesn't matter what they believe, right? Because you feel that they are amazing. You can tell. And I mean, they might, have a structure of beliefs or a philosophy or whatever. And, that's helpful and good, but really it's a felt life. It's a lived lifestyle. So paradoxically, if you live out your lives with just habitualized responses to where you're effectively just driving the car like I do to work, and I don't remember that hour a day or whatever it is. I don't remember anything that happened. I don't remember what cars were in front of me or behind me or how fast I went or even what the weather was like, because I'm just a zombie in that moment, right? That is so habitualized, it's so baked in to my actions with the world around me that I don't remember it because I was completely not present. If you choose to live your life completely not present, you will be safe, and that'll be kind of the end. Or you can come into the habit of always setting aside your habits. And I get that it's paradoxical and you guys can handle it, right? Just get into the habit, if you must get into a habit at all, get into the habit of setting aside your habits and living the life as it comes to you, looking at it. Some of the most beautiful artists, or I should say some of the most beautiful artwork that has been created, is because these artists have looked at a thing so well that they have painted or expressed the essence of that thing in a way that you didn't allow yourself to perceive, but it's there. Like a flower. So Georgia O'Keeffe or, a bunch of other artists, they are staring at this flower and they don't have the habitualized response, which is like, yep, that's a flower. I got it. I'm moving on. Instead, they look at the flower, they feel the flower, they understand the flower until they can express the flower's essence in a work of art. I hope that makes sense because it's kind of wild if you think about it. You always have the opportunity to see the flower in such a beautiful way, but instead we choose to just say, oh, that's a flower over there and I don't give a shit. So living artistically, living with passion would be to be present in all of those moments. So if you're parenting and you feel your child's heart and you understand their wants and needs and confusions and you don't predetermine all of your answers to them, you can show them how to live present. innocently. And you have the opportunity to benefit from that too. You can sort of understand their essence, just like the artist, expresses the essence of the flower. They are always expressing themselves to you, or you can just label them as, oh, that's my kid, and blow it off. And then they're going to be an adult, and their whole life you will have given them the reaction of, I'm not going to look at who you are. I'm not going to learn who you are. I'm not going to hear and accept and love your expression of yourself. Instead, I'm just going to label you as my daughter, and that's all you're ever going to get. I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre that called that annihilation. These habitualized responses and labels for people that we come up with, because it's easier and simpler, I guess, to stereotype in that way, But if you just give someone a label and then you no longer listen to who they actually are, that's annihilation. So don't do that to other people, and don't do it to yourself. All right, that's all the time we got for today. So hey guys, we're going to be playing at Smith's Old Bar at 8 p.m. on April 6th. So I hope you can show up. It'd be awesome to see you guys there. It's $10 online. It's at Jonathan Sparks Music, JONATHAN SparksMusic.com. You can order tickets there, or you can go to Smith's Old Bar website. I think it's $15 at the door, but hope to see you there. I've also released a new single called Real Human Being that came out just a week ago, so hope to check it out on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever streaming service you use. We're also playing at the Launch Music Festival in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be awesome. If you're anywhere nearby, please stop by. We'll see you soon. Keep rocking, guys. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to hear more, check us out on JonathanSparksMusic.com, JONATHAN SparksMusic.com. Please like and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. We love you guys. We'll talk soon.